Chapter 23 is covering GI or gastrointestinal tract diseases. So first of all, starting with our defenses of this system, quite a few, as you'll see, because as you can imagine, we come into a lot of contact with microbes through our GI system. So there's a layer of mucus that lines the intestinal surface that just provides a natural kind of barrier, makes it hard for organisms to penetrate and gain access to our receptors and then into our cells. It has secretory IgA, which are antibodies that are scavenging and looking for foreign invaders. Peristalsis, which is just the movement of microbes. So as food is moving through, that also keeps microbes moving through. Starting in the mouth, we have a couple enzymes. So we have lysozyme, which is that enzyme we talked about with tears that breaks down peptidoglycan, so especially sensitive with those gram-positive bacteria. Lactoferrin sucks up a bunch of iron, which is needed for many microbes to reproduce and survive. So breaking down peptidoglycan, sucking up iron. In the stomach, the acidic levels, so very low pH, makes it hard for a lot of microbes to survive and or reproduce. Bile that gets released from our gallbladder and then enters into the GI system is antimicrobial, has a lot of properties that prevents microbes from growing. And then also our lymphatics. So we've mentioned different types of secondary lymphoid tissue. So the gut-associated lymphoid tissue provides that lymphatic association to help identify microbes as well. Now the normal biota is huge. We have a large amount of normal biota, starting in the mouth, but also in the gut. So starting here with the mouth, so the oral normal biota. So the GI tract overall has a large variety and diversity, and more information is being found about this biota, and that it could actually impact diseases or cancers, even obesity, that as our some parts of our normal biota may be harmful or helpful and beneficial. So just lots of information coming out about this. We're going to be learning lots more about it throughout the years, and may even be using it as treatment. So in that oral microbiome, mainly bacterial species, but also some archaea. We haven't talked much about those all semester, but the archaea, again, prokaryotic, but live in kind of extreme conditions, but they can produce a compound called methane. Fungi can be in there as well, some protists, some viruses can actually be present there on a normal basis. So again, lots of variety in this normal biota of the mouth. And then in the gut, so in the esophagus and the stomach, again, the stomach is very acidic, so that's going to be a very different biome than what we see in the mouth and what we see in the gut. So most of the types belong to what are called firmicutes. So again, they need to be able to survive that acidic condition, but again, lots of variety still here. Then in the large intestine, so now we have a more neutral pH, but now it's anaerobic. There's not oxygen that we have in the mouth. So again, a different normal biota here as well. This is actually where the majority of microbes are. So lots and lots, just to put that into perspective, 10 to the 11th power, that's a lot of zeros. That's how many microbes are in that large intestine. And again, a variety of bacteria, fungi, and protists. Whereas the accessory organs, more like the spleen and those type, are thought to be free of normal biota. And then just a little bit more here about the functions of that, because there are so many, especially in the large intestine. So they do have a protective function, so that antagonism, that it prevents pathogens from attaching, it uses up resources. But also it's important in teaching the immune system to react to normal versus pathogenic, because again, there are so many good bacteria there. It trains our immune system to be like, oh, this is a good one, and this is a bad one. So it helps with that. And then also very important, especially whenever we talk about animals like cows, but for us as well, those microbes help with digestion and they provide nutrients. So for example, cattle, they can't break down cell walls of cellulose that's mainly in their diet of plants. It relies completely on the bacteria in there to break down that and release glucose. So we don't have that association. We have different microbes, but it's still, they're helping break down our proteins and our carbs and all of that to give us nutrients. And again, back to this health, again, lots more to come about this, but a diverse biome is associated with good health. So it's very likely as we learn more and more, again, we're seeing a connection between the gut biome, even to mental health, again, obesity, cancers, lots of connections are starting to be seen. All right, starting with our first infection of the GI system, it's actually the most common infectious disease. And if I asked you, what do you think is the most common infectious disease out there? You're probably not going to say cavities, but that is the answer. So dental caries or cavities is the most common infectious disease of humans. So it causes the breakdown or dissolution of that surface due to the metabolic actions. More specifically, as bacteria are going through respiration and getting their energy, they release lots of acids. And so those acids break down the enamel. So it results in minor or complete breakdown of the enamel, and then can even destroy deeper layers whenever there's a deeper and can destroy deeper layers and result in infections of what's called the pulp. So those deeper layers, so we see over here in our picture this pulp cavity. So again, just getting into the deeper layers of the tooth, not the superficial parts. Now, the two that are most associated in lots of organisms can cause these, but the two main causes, Streptococcus mutans and Strep sobrinus. These are the two main causes, not the only, of dental cavities. So a little bit about the stages of plaque, and we're bringing this one back. Again, these chapters are kind of bringing back some of the terminologies, helping you apply some of the things we've learned throughout the semester. And the reason we're talking about plaque and its buildup is because that's going to bring us back to those good old biofilms, so those mixtures of microbes. So whenever we have cavities, again, that can vary as far as incidence, but it's a lot of times based on the diet, so the carbohydrate, so chewing lots of sugared gum versus sugar-free, sugary diets, of course, oral hygiene, brushing and flossing, as well as some genetic factors. We often see this in families, so they have similar diets, brush their teeth about the same, but one is more likely to get cavities than others. A lot of times there is a genetic factor that plays a role in this. But what happens, especially again, that Streptococcus mutans, it produces that sticky polymer of glucose that makes up fructans and glucans, just carbohydrates. But again, that sugary substance that gets released allows a substrate for other microbes to attach. So again, we get this formation of these biofilms. So again, one attaches. Here we get a pellicle. Again, it starts colonizing those bacteria, and then they start allowing other microbes to attach until we have that full-blown biofilm with a variety of microbes. They're releasing acids as they're going through metabolism. That's breaking down enamel, and it just furthers the problem. And this is just looking, again, what we can actually see. So here's the plaque that gets removed. And of course, while oral hygiene is so important and proper dental appointments to get that plaque out. But if we look at the microscopic level, again, we see this huge variety, this mixture of microbes that are in that biofilm. So our summary table, again, lots of different microbes here, especially those that produce acid as they're going through respiration, but predominantly the Streptococcus mutans, one of the most prevalent, but others as well. So we need that direct contact. But again, adhesion is the virulence factor here that releases those carbohydrates that allow it to attach and help form the biofilm, as well as producing acid that then breaks down the enamel to ultimately cause the cavity. Now, another one here that is associated with the with the oral cavity is mumps. So this is one that we're vaccinated against. So the MMR, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. So mumps is distinct painful swelling of the jaw. So you can see here in this individual that has an infection, it is caused by a virus. So an RNA virus of the paramyxovirus. So this genus here of viruses leads to mumps. Some of the complications, of course, it starts here in the oral cavity, but it can go to other organs like the testes and ovaries, so the reproductive, also the thyroid, pancreas, the meninges of the brain, the heart, and the kidney. So it can cause secondary effects after that exposure in the oral cavity. And then just a little bit back to the reproductive, and about 20 to 30% of males who become infected with this virus, it becomes localized in the epididymis and the testes. Thankfully, though, it does not lead to sterility, but it does cause infections in that reproductive system. And then our paramyxo virus here. So one of the things that these can do, as we've seen with other viruses, is they cause that syncytium, which is where the host, so we have the virus here, so it's in this host cell 1, so it comes in, it uncoats, it leads to, kind of viral production, so it takes over the host cell, it's making viral proteins and particles, but then instead of leaving and lysing and going outside of the host cell where it could be detected by the immune system, what it does is it fuses these cells together. So it causes this fusion, and that allows the virus to move from one to the other without leaving the cell. It just joins them together in this syncytium that allows them to move. So we get these giant cells that get formed where we have lots of nuclei because they're all attached due to this viral infection. So our summary table here, again, paramyxovirus, as in all of our viruses, droplet contact here. Again, that syncytium is the virulence factor that allows it to cause an infection without being seen. But we do have that vaccine, the MMR, which is a live attenuated vaccine. Again, that means that the organisms are hindered, but they are actually able to reproduce. But they've been so weakened that unless somebody is immunocompromised, developing the actual condition is highly unlikely. All right, now as we move into out of the oral cavity, so gastritis and gastric ulcers. So just the term gastritis, excuse me, is a sharp or burning pain coming from the abdomen. And then ulcers are lesions of the mucosa. So remember, one of our defenses is that thick layer of mucus. Well, whenever that mucus is broken down and a lesion occurs in the stomach, or it can be in the upper part of the small intestine as well, it can lead to these ulcers. Now, also, ulcers is one that new research has relatively recently been developed or shown that ulcers were thought to have been a thing caused by stress or diet or things like that. We now know that ulcers are caused by a bacteria, Helicobacter pylori. It has a flagella and it can penetrate through and it causes these openings or these lesions of the small intestine or the stomach that allows that stomach content to leak out. So this bacteria, though, infects about half of the world's population, so it's a very common microbe. It can be treated with an antibiotic. Now, stress and some other things can change the pattern of Helicobacter and make it more prevalent. But again, stress itself is not the cause of ulcers. It is a bacterial infection. Again, our summary table, so the Helicobacter pylori, so oral to oral or oral fecal route is most likely for getting this. It does have adhesins that allow it to attach. It does produce an enzyme called urease that breaks down urea that allows it to survive. And then again, that treatment there with antibiotics and also decreasing the acid. And that's just going to change its replication and also helps limit the damage that's done during that infection.